the King of Kings.
Welcome to another episode of the King's Couch. I'm your host, Sulo King, and today I have the amazing Nicholas Madamba, aka Jack Apollo, who
Hey
I just
everybody.
met last weekend at WonderCon. It's a really interesting story. I was just at a food truck getting some food, and all of a sudden behind me, I hear this guy playing an Elvis song. And at first I was like, that doesn't sound like someone with a Bluetooth speaker or some background music playing from somewhere. That sounds like someone actually playing. And I thought to myself, all of a sudden, this is so unique. And I turn around and it's this guy.
Yep.
and
And wearing
and
the
he's
exact
so
same jacket.
passionate about it. And I was just instantly drawn in because it's not every day that you run into somebody, especially at, convention like WonderCon or Comic Con or any of the other, arts conventions that is so specific, doing an Elvis, cosplay, you know, um, thing like yourself. I mean, I saw a couple other people walking around dressed as kings, but I have never once seen anyone dressed like Elvis, let alone carrying around a semi-hollow body electric guitar and performing for anybody. I thought that was so cool. And, I asked him right off the bat if I could film him and hear a little bit about his story. And then, after talking to him for about 5, 10 minutes, I said, hey, you know what? Let's have you on the show. So here we are today. I appreciate having you on.
Thank you
And
very much.
from one Elvis fan to another, it's such a pleasure. Actually, the first true Elvis fan
Likewise.
I had on the show that is just diehard like I am. Uh,
Aw.
and it's great to meet someone, especially in your age bracket. You're only 25, right?
Yep, just turned 25 last weekend.
Oh,
And
happy
yep.
belated birthday! So that was like your
Oh, thank
birthday
you.
trip at the same
Oh
time.
yeah, definitely. And it was a great birthday trip overall. An opportunity to, meet up with some old friends, to get into costume, get into cosplay, and to be able to sing my heart out with a guitar was just something else.
You travel to a lot of the different conventions throughout the country.
Well, good question. Honestly, I've only been to a handful. I usually stay local to the DC area for like KatsuCon, AwesomeCon, and Otakon. But I'm at a point right now as a cosplayer where just a lot of the cons, I'm really beginning to focus on the bigger ones in terms of continuing to grow my brand. Also working on creating video reels, including both reenactments and also live covers of my favorite Elvis songs. But yeah, I've only been to like MegaCon Orlando a couple of times, and Dragon Con, and for the first time this year, WonderCon. As of right now, my current goal as a cosplayer is really just to continue to network at these events, and as an aspiring actor, hopefully put my name and my face out there so that people, even just people that I might not realize who are in the industry, see who I am. So maybe if they want me for a future project or potentially, need my voice for something else, that I get to be part of their creative processes.
Right. You have to excuse me. My cat just jumped on my lap.
Oh, he's so
Kind of
cute.
Dickinson.
Oh,
Yeah, she's
because I
needing
got
attention.
yeah.
But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
that's great. I think it's real unique what you're doing, and you have like this whole, combination quasi.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, I took one look at you, and I was like, okay, he's doing Elvis. He's Filipino.
Yep.
He's also dressed in, was it a Spider-Man suit
Yep.
underneath?
That's what I was wearing. And
You
then
got like a
on,
Star-Lord jacket from like Galaxy.
yeah, good question. It's actually an Attack and Titan jacket from
That's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. And I've just been wearing that whole thing all weekend and decided to wear it again for the interview because it's kind of just like my to-go piece. It makes me feel really powerful, especially when you watch the anime where they're killing these giant Titan monsters. So yeah. And then on Saturday I was doing a morph, basically Elvis or morph from X-Men 97 as Elvis Presley because the guy can shapeshift into anybody. He's kind of like the comedian of the team. So I figured, why not have Morph as an actual Elvis impersonator? Something funny and also something pretty cool. Merging my own passion for Elvis with my growing love for X-Men.
I love that you're merging music with comic books. and
Thank
particularly
you.
Elvis Presley, which is great.
Hmm.
So
Oh, indeed.
what I like to do with all my guests on the show is I like to go back to
Yeah,
the beginning of your childhood,
of
what your
course.
inspirations were. Like for me, my father, took me away from the radio and said, this is how people get tired of listening to artists by just hearing the same single over and over again. But you got to go
Hmm.
back to
Yeah.
the beginning. Everything starts with the blues and then work your way up
Oh,
and
yeah.
hear my
Hmm.
records and playing around with them. I fell in love with the 50s and then I was like, well, Elvis Presley is so cool. And, I'm a product of the 80s because I'm 44, middle aged now.
Hey.
And, I'm glad that I had that kind of influence growing up. And it's different for everybody. Some people have their
Hmm.
own self discoveries, especially in this day and age, digital age that we're in now. It's so much more accessible and easier to discover music than it was for someone that was like a product of the 80s, like myself. So
Absolutely.
yourself, was it
Yeah.
something, like
Hmm.
how did you discover Elvis? Like, what were
Yeah.
your early influences, growing up?
Absolutely, absolutely. So growing up, I never really, at least from the time that I was a baby to 10, I never really heard much about Elvis. I mean, I heard his name mentioned and saw his face, albeit very briefly, in the movie Lilo and Stitch and heard his music, but I was never really interested in him until I heard the song Burning Love my junior year of high school. And then a couple years later, when I was in college, I started buying these pomade cans by the company American Crew that made a bunch of different styling products with like different holds, different shine, and here are a couple of them right now. So here's the forming
Yeah,
cream with his
I
face
have
from.
that too. My ex-girlfriend was a stylist for Paul Mitchell and
Yep.
bought me the lunchbox, like limited edition and everything with all of them, the whole set.
Well,
So
well,
funny.
damn.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh yeah. And so this is kind of my introduction into Elvis Presley, seeing his face over here in Speedway, and then also this over here from another movie that I just forget, but and collecting some of those, pomade cans, especially after the movie came out a couple of years ago. It just was something that got me into listening to his music, and then eventually on YouTube I find a video of him singing the Heartbreak Hotel Hound Dog All Shook Up medley, and I just thought it was really cool. Then later that December, we're having a holiday celebration out on the lawn over in the University of Virginia or UVA. And I was just kind of going around, kind of like mingling with some friends. And I happened to try to impress some of the girls on our soccer team. I ended up singing the Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, All Shook Up, or something like that. And a couple of them were like, "Oh, gee, he's Elvis back from the dead." But this is well before I discovered cosplay, so it was just kind of like a it was just kind of like in the back of my head until the movie came out, and then I decided to cosplay Elvis for the very first time at Holiday Matsuri or Hallmat Orlando 2022, where I was just even before I picked up my guitar again, I was going around the hotel just singing like Viva Las Vegas, Burnin' Love, Trouble, Baby Let's Play House, a lot of the classic Elvis hits to people around. And I also had some older women who were like, OMG, I grew up on Elvis and I really love that. It made me realize that I was really, finding my niche both as a cosplayer and as a singer all over again. And from there, it just became me picking up my guitar again, learning how to play the various tunes, and even upgrading to both a semi hollow and a hollow body electric guitar to really just fit the image, fit the model of the King of Rock.
I love that. At what age did you first discover Elvis?
Gosh, so I would say for genuine discovery, I would say around my junior year, so maybe when I was about like 16 or 17. And a couple of years later, when I was about like 19, going on 20, was I started to listening to more of his music. And in terms of actually getting into him as a character, when I was, gosh, 23.
Okay, that's cool, man. I love it. I just Googled it right now because I was curious. I know he's been
Hmm.
in so many films. So he's been
Yeah.
in over 31 feature films,
Oh, yeah.
starting with his first movie, Love Me Tender. And
Yeah.
I want to just, verify this going off the top of my head and make sure I was right. For a number of
Yours,
years, he
man.
was one of the top Hollywood actors, highest paid actors back then,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean, he wasn't even an actor. He was a musician and didn't really want to
Hmm.
act. So a lot of
Yeah.
his movies were musicals.
Hmm.
And a lot of people make fun of his acting. I didn't think it
Yeah.
was half bad, to be honest with you. Thought he was
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean, I've
There,
only seen, I'm sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
no, no, go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I've only seen a handful of clips of his from scenes, but he definitely seemed like he was a good actor, and it was around like maybe the mid 60s that he realized that it would have been a good career for him, but it was only that the Colonel was continuing to put him in all the same movies with the same, just the same overall choreography, the same kind of
That's right.
songs,
Yeah,
and yep, and he never really got the opportunity to blossom as an artist because of him.
I agree. And that's a whole nother conversation about the Colonel
Oh
and his
yeah.
manipulation of how, he was such a degenerate gambler. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, he might have started out having somewhat good intentions, but I mean, the guy was
Mm-hmm.
just a whole promoter, just wanted to
Absolutely.
hit it big. Saw Elvis as the biggest star ever, and then
Mm-hmm.
his
Yep.
gambling addiction just took over. That's why he was never able to leave the country, and he was trapped in
Yep.
Vegas,
Yeah,
in those
absolutely.
final days.
And I
So
was reading too in a book about him, Elvis and the Colonel, was that he was basically he embodied the idea of wanderlust. He first came to the country around like maybe his mid-teens, 15 or 16. He was just jumping across trains and going across the country, working odd jobs, and then he came back. I think working on a ship, got some more work in Holland, but it wasn't until the time that he was in his I believe when he was in his 20s that he decided to leave Holland for good. And biographer Alana Nash writes that there was a woman who was murdered near where Colonel Tom Parker lived, and all the authorities could find of the killer were just pepper was sprinkled around her body. And Nash wrote that perhaps Parker was a person of interest in this crime, and so that could have led to him never getting a passport in the first place. Hence the reason why he never wanted to leave the country, never applied to get a passport, and just basically lived out as Colonel Tom Parker for the rest of his life until documents regarding his actual Dutch identity were brought to light around the 80s, around the time that Elvis Presley Enterprises were pushing the lawsuits against him, that
mhm.
his abuses were finally exposed to the public.
Yeah, and that's why in the movie portrayal, Colonel
Hmm.
Tom Parker, Tom Hanks had the accent
Yep.
throughout the film, and a lot of people were super confused about
Hmm.
it, but
Yep.
because he was just putting
Hmm.
on an act.
Exactly. And
Him
even though a lot
himself.
of
Yeah.
yeah, and even though in real life Colonel Tom Parker never spoke with such an accent in public, I think the reason why Tom Hanks put on such an accent was because when we watch the movie from the very beginning, we can see that it's coming from his own mind, his head. So it's kind of like how should I say it's I think his name's in Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, Willie Loman. You're seeing the perspective of Willie Loman kind of just like being, trapped in the past, trapped in his own world. And so Boz Lerman creates a similar effect when we hear the Colonel speaking with his actual accent, telling his own, misnarrated version of his own life and that of Elvis Presley's. And that's
Yeah.
what I feel, even though people complain about, I feel that it's something that just further highlights the fact that Colonel Tom Parker was overall a very unsavory and untrustworthy individual, even if he did have a couple of displays of kindness or generosity here and there.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of people just love to judge a book by its cover and not do the investigations and research themselves to, you know,
Absolutely.
find that information out about Colonel Tom Parker.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, a lot of people think that Elvis was a pedophile or Elvis was a racist
Yep.
or abusive, womanizing jerk. And
Indeed.
I, as an Elvis fan, have been fortunate enough to have gone to Graceland twice. I went on a whole musical trip to actually 10 years ago.
Oh wow.
A week before his birthday celebrations. I spent my New
Hmm.
Year's Eve from 2013 to 2014 in Graceland.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
and
Beautiful.
I don't know, it was at 2014 to 15. I think it was 2014 and 15, sorry. And then I got to come home and perform on Elvis's birthday, which was great. And I did a cover of Money Honey.
Nice.
I got to open up for this band called Dictators, which is a legendary rock and roll band from New York. And I remember Handsome Dick Manitoba, the lead singer, comes up to me and he tugs on my shirt. He's like, I like this. And I was like, I was wearing an Elvis button-up shirt that I got at a gift shop out in Graceland. And I was like, I just got
Yep.
this week in Graceland. You
Now
know?
that is really cool.
And I also, this coin I have right in front of me, it's
Yeah.
my lucky coin. You can't really see it too well,
Oh,
but I
sweet.
a little vending
Yep.
machine. It says
Now that's
TBC
beautiful.
on one side, and the other
Hmm.
side, King of Rock and Roll. And
Yep.
it's like my lucky gold coin.
Oh
And
yeah.
I
Yeah.
carry
Just
it
as.
around with me a lot,
Hmm.
especially in situations where I feel like kind of anxious or feel like I need to ground myself, go for a walk. I'll just kind of flip it in my,
Hmm.
my hand. And I'm getting ready to go out to Sun Studios at the end of this month and live out a dream of recording it
Oh,
there.
absolutely. And I can totally relate with having, having a lucky item with the king's likeness on it because for WonderCon, these two picks were among the ones that I most frequently use for like pictures, for playing songs. And
There you
I mean
go.
physically they're about the same. They're both made by Paris and they're not going to be like physically any different from each other, but it's like when you're cosplaying and you're performing as the king of rock and roll, you might as well be playing with a pick that showcases his most one of what I feel is his best performance ever. I mean, a lot of people will say that, yeah, Elvis looked really good during the Vegas years, and I agree, but it was really the 68 comeback special that brought out kind of the youthfulness, but also the huskiness of his voice in
Right.
terms of just like you see him with the longer sideburns the first time. He's got his hair perfectly brill creamed, and then he's doing all the musical numbers.
Right.
He's jamming with his old boys, Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana, along with his Memphis Mafia friends, Charlie Hodge and Alan Fortas. And they're just kind of jamming to his favorite hits, improving everything on stage. And it just really brought out kind of the humorous side and also the vulnerable side of the king of rock and roll, while without downplaying the power and talent that he brought to a room.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, you really know your Elvis history. I love it, man.
Oh yeah. Well,
It's
definitely.
so
I mean,
impressive, especially for someone your age. Most
oh,
people
thank you.
your age bracket don't even know who Elvis Presley is, or oh yeah, my grandfather used to listen to Elvis or something
Yeah.
like that. They're
Well,
lucky. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, that kind of brings me to why do I cosplay Elvis? Well, I've cosplayed Elvis because not only did he necessarily look good, and I happen to have the black hair and was able to grow out my sideburns, as we were talking about in the recording that you made of me at WonderCon, but as an autistic, I always struggled to kind of find my voice, and it was through like dressing up and embodying powerful characters, even before cosplay became a part of my life, that I kind of found like a confidence, a power. And so when I started to cosplay Elvis and would sing to people, it kind of helped me get over things like awkwardness, especially around girls at even at Comic Cons, and gave me an opportunity to form those genuine connections in a way that it was both myself, but it was also very educating and I guess enlightening for a lot of people to showcase like here's the king of rock, not only the king of rock and roll, but here's the king of rock and roll in contexts that are relevant for us, like
Right.
modern anime, comic books, etc. And it really ties into Elvis's JC's award speech in 1971, where he talks about how when he was a kid, he always pictured himself as the hero in the comic books or the hero in the movies. And so, and when you look at Elvis's career in Vegas, you see all those flashy jumpsuits, the way that he spreads his cape, and he, basically makes a spectacle of himself, not in a bad way, but makes a spectacle of himself for his audience, which just shows how much he loved music and how much he loved, I guess, visual art as a whole, and to put them together and create something that everybody can enjoy. That's where I feel Elvis's legacy should be remembered in, even if a lot of people do talk about, as you mentioned, the negative aspects, like the rumors about him being a pedophile or being a racist or basically stealing from other artists, things like that.
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that back in those days, we everyone was pretty much covering blues artists anyways. There wasn't
Absolutely.
a lot of original writing to begin with. So that was a
Yeah.
controversy, especially with artists like Chuck Berry getting into rock and roll or Little Richard. Little Richard was always trying to, he
Hmm.
had this huge rivalry with Elvis Presley, you
Yeah.
know, and would always just like take puns at him, even in recordings, live recordings. he would be
Yeah.
introduced as the original king of rock and roll, you know,
Yep.
and uh, it's just interesting because someone dubbed Elvis the king of rock and roll. That's not something that
Yep.
was self-proclaimed by him, you know.
Exactly.
And
And that's
Elvis,
something
like
that
a lot of artists, I don't think really wanted to be
mhm,
famous. He just kind of wanted to take care of his family, especially his mother. And
Oh
it
yeah.
broke his heart that his mother died young, heart disease, heart attack.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting how he passed away in a similar circumstance. Just kind of let himself go. The depression, the
Yeah.
pills, the bad dieting, alcoholism,
Yeah.
everything caught up with him so quickly. And then after he
Yeah.
passes away, I think it was what 3 years later, his father passes away.
Yeah, Vernon.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
it really is a family. It's just a family of tragedy, and I'm not saying that in a critical tone, but just in a very empathetic tone. Because,
same.
yeah, I mean, not only did Vernon Presley pass away 3 years later, but when you look at, fast forward to my generation, Benjamin Keough, the grandson of Elvis Presley. I mean, I don't claim necessarily know everything, but from the news articles that I've read about the kid, he was a lot was expected of him. I mean, he
He's a
was
musician, just like his grandfather.
exactly.
In certain
And
photos,
he
he's almost identical to Elvis
exactly.
Presley.
Yeah, he inherited his looks, like the nose, the facial expressions, the eyes, the soulful appearance, and he also wanted to get into the music industry, but I think somebody ripped him off or basically didn't give him a chance. And I was reading that right around the time that they were beginning production on the Elvis movie or working on it, that was around the time that he committed suicide. I think
Yep.
he put a gun in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and that that just, changed his mom, Lisa
Yeah.
Marie. And it was during that time that she really grew close to Austin Butler, who played Elvis and also happened to lose his own mother beforehand. So to channel that own grief, both for when he played the part of losing Gladys Presley in the movie, and of course his real life tragedy of losing his own mother, I felt that was just something that was, of course, very tragic, but also forged a beautiful relationship between the two, Lisa Marie Presley and Austin Butler.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad. I think when Ben Kehoe committed suicide, it was in front of his girlfriend too, something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, I
And
think it
just,
might have been, yeah. It was
yeah,
at a party
tragic.
or something. Yeah.
And I remember even like when they did the 50th anniversary special for the comeback
Mhm.
special,
Yeah.
when Lisa Marie got on camera, she didn't look good. She had been
Mhm.
battling addiction and depression for
Yeah.
a long time. It's like the Presley
Mhm.
curse, what I call
Mhm.
it. Just tragedy has bestowed the entire family. And when Ben Kehoe committed suicide, that just drove Lisa Marie off the edge completely. And
Absolutely.
I've talked to a friend of mine who used to be a roommate of
Wow.
and Riley's dad. Was it Michael Kehoe? And
Danny.
or
Danny.
Yeah, Danny Kehoe, and gave me some insights that when him and Lisa
Mhm.
Marie split up, he used to check in with her. In fact, I think he was there when she passed away and
Mhm.
was trying to help revive her. Ironically, I'm out in Starkville, Mississippi, getting ready to go to Tupelo the very next morning when I
Wow.
get the news from my mother, text me, that Lisa Marie went into sudden cardiac arrest and then earlier that day. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, I hope she makes it. Hope she's going to be okay. I was like, first thought in my head was like, man, she just lost her son. I was like,
Mhm. Yeah.
question in my head, was it drugs? Was this, what's going on? Poor lifestyle choices, whatever it may be, as it.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then, finding out that she passes away, like I was at a bar enjoying myself, watching this acoustic artist play, and he had just
Mhm.
played like a real somber song, right
Mhm.
before my mother texted me confirming that she had passed away. And I had to excuse myself in front of my sister and her friend. And I had to go out into the patio and just kind of take a moment to myself and just
Yeah.
absorb like what was happening because I'm going to Elvis's birthplace the next morning. I went to the museum where the recreation of the
Mhm.
the little shack that they grew up in.
Yeah.
And they had a whole recreation of Elvis singing for the first time at 8 years old in the church. It was like a
Wow.
complete like, immersive experience where they had like a little short film rendition recreating like all these scenes, and they had movie screens popping down from each side of the church that you'd walk into, and it was a whole presentation. It was just,
Yeah.
you know, I was fortunate enough to like, vlog while I was out there, and talk about that, and I was watching that footage the other day when I was looking for some stuff to use for promo, uh,
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah.
my upcoming Sun Studio trip, and like all those memories came flooding back because that was just, last year. It wasn't that long ago.
Hmm.
And then I got to go to Graceland, and Graceland had the most somber tone ever. Like
Oh,
when I
I.
got to Tupelo, walked inside the museum, I was talking to one of the employees for a little while because I saw a lot of the news crew leaving, right when we were pulling up, and she was talking about how everyone's just, it's a sad day for the Presley family and everything, and she was one of the
Absolutely.
people that was interviewed, and
Yeah.
just it was a really interesting time when I was out there. You know,
Absolutely. And the thing too that Priscilla should have been, not saying this in, a judgmental light, but
um,
just naturally, people would have expected Priscilla to pass first, and now she loses first her grandson and then her own daughter first. I mean, must, really be a pain that just doesn't compare.
yeah, I
And
mean,
then having to,
I,
tech. Yeah.
there's still Riley, and I think another
Yeah,
set of
then yeah,
daughters, right?
Lisa had two twins
That's right.
with another celebrity. I forget his name though. So
Yeah, and I heard that was a real rocky relationship as well, and she had
yeah.
started taking pills, and just headed down a rough road. I mean, she was a great artist too. I love
Mhm.
the duet she did with one of her father's songs,
Oh,
years ago.
oh
It
yeah,
was-
she did a handful, and
yeah.
somebody even put together that duet of "In the Ghetto" with Austin Butler's rendition. So it was the three of them singing together, and in my
Oh, really?
opinion, was just one of the most beautiful things. It was like both the actual singer, his daughter, and then the actor who got the honor of being able to portray his life in the movie.
Yeah. That's amazing. I got to check that out. I haven't heard that rendition. I've heard a lot of Lisa Marie's duets that she did.
Hmm. Oh
The
yeah,
remixes, but going back to the movie,
yeah,
you know, of
absolutely.
course, everyone's hitting me up. Thought of you, King. Thought of you. When I watched it, did you? I love how people ask me, "Have you seen Elvis yet?" I was like,
Yeah.
it'd be sacrilegious if I didn't go. I,
Oh yeah.
in fact, Baz Luhrmann liked my Instagram post.
Oh.
I paid a tribute to it, and that made me so
Hmm.
happy because not only is it an Elvis movie, but I'm a huge Baz Luhrmann fan too. I love all his
Hmm.
work,
Yeah.
and his whole just eccentric approach to filmmaking. It's just
Hmm.
one thing that was kind of weird that slowly grew on me was the musical score. He contemporized it a little. It was
Yeah.
like a mashup, so it was interesting. Some people criticize that, but you
Yeah,
can't
it didn't really, it didn't
happy,
really
right?
bother me at all because I mean, from a modern perspective, it did give some of the TikTokers, some sounds that they could actually play with because, as much as I do love, I love Elvis Presley and like the traditional yet, modern sound that he brought. It's also understandable that for a lot of these TikTokers, I mean, hip hop and rap is really all that they know. And so in a certain sense, it did make Elvis's story at the very least relatable for them, especially these, younger kids or, these TikTok creators who are around my age bracket, maybe a little bit older that do use these sounds.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people don't think of that perspective. So it's refreshing to hear someone in your
Yeah,
age, acknowledge that.
yeah,
And that's something that's probably easily overlooked by
oh, definitely.
people that viewed and
Mhm.
criticized, the soundtrack due to that fact.
Yeah,
I'll give Austin Butler a lot of credit. At first, I took
hmm,
one look at him when his
yeah,
casting was announced. I was like, this guy doesn't look like Elvis Presley.
yeah. I
I was like,
mean, no
why
offense
didn't
to him.
they cast
Yeah,
Drake Milligan? I was like, that guy killed it in the Sun
hmm,
Records
yeah,
miniseries. It was meant to be a miniseries, and then it took off all of a sudden, and they had all these, episodes that kept going, and all of a sudden the plug gets pulled.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
gets completely canceled for no real reason at all.
Yeah.
Right when the
Uh,
show was just starting to get good, and they were starting to showcase Jerry Lee Lewis on his rise, because the
yeah.
just on Elvis Presley, of course, was like the centerpiece, with Johnny Cash and
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Lee Lewis, which was
Oh
really
yeah.
cool. And I was just like really getting excited about the show. And all of a sudden, that was it, just done, kaput. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
thought Drake Milligan not only was a spitting image of a young king,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I mean, he is an amazing Elvis impersonator. You
Oh,
know,
indeed.
he
And
doesn't
not to
really do
mention
that
too,
as a
he's got
profession, because
yeah,
his own original music is completely different. It's very country oriented. If you've
yeah.
ever heard his
Oh,
album,
definitely. And that's something that I really like too, because kind of going into the idea of country music, I mean, a couple of years ago when I was in college, my dream was actually to become a country singer-songwriter, but I wasn't really in love, I kind of hated my voice to be honest, and it was through Elvis Presley that I kind of rediscovered it. And I've also been covering a lot of country music, or doing covers of like, modern country songs in addition to modern Elvis hits because I mean, it's not only an expression of what I love, but it's also because the real Elvis himself covered a lot of country music like Kentucky Rain, When My Blue Moon Turns to Gold. Also, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry,
right?
and he just added his own take on it. So yeah,
I love it. So, did you teach yourself how to play guitar? How long have you been playing
pretty
guitar
much. I
for?
mean, I took a couple of lessons with a private instructor, but most of it was really just kind of learning the chords, learning the fingerings, and practicing a bunch. But I've been playing guitar ever since I was about like I started like maybe 2012, 2013-ish. And so this is going to be like 11 years, give or take,
Okay.
11 to 12 years.
You played any other instruments, or was
Um, well, I used to play the clarinet,
it?
from fifth. Well, I first started off with the violin in fourth grade, and then I moved on to the clarinet from fifth to seventh grade. But ever since I, was listening to a lot of music and had an iPod, my dream was always to move up to a guitar because I
Okay.
always loved to sing, and it was just the coolest looking instrument to
Yeah.
me then, and it still kind of is today, especially these hollow bodies because even though I don't play the violin, viola or cello, I mean, I look at the shapes, and I just really love like the sunburst finish and the F holes, and it just exudes a certain classical appeal.
Speaking of guitars, I'll show you mine real quick.
Yeah, please.
So let me show you, because it's got a very Elvis Gibson feel to his acoustic.
Hey, that's what I love to hear. Let's take a look.
I have this hanging on my wall.
Oh
So this
yeah,
is
nice.
a Fender
Mm-hmm.
signature edition by a guitar player named Ron Emery, and
Mm,
he plays in
cool.
a punk band called TSOL, True Sons of
Mm-hmm.
Liberty. I even had him sign it on the back of the headstock years ago
Mm-hmm.
at my studio.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and one of my clients worked at a guitar shop, and he was always, I had monthly rehearsal spaces. He was always late paying his rent. And
Uh-huh. Yeah.
so I felt like he was kind of trying to, you know, get more on my good side again, in my
Oh
good
yeah.
graces. And so he's like, hey, saw me wearing a TSOL shirt one day at the studio. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
there's this guitar,
Yeah.
did you know that Ron Emery put out his own signature series? I was like, no.
Yeah,
I
that's
was like,
cool.
oh my God. And I went and looked it up online, and he's like, well, we don't have the Sunburst edition, but we have this gold one. It's very reminiscent of like Elvis's,
Yeah,
gift that he had,
exactly.
kind of like what this is supposed to be in this, shadow
Yeah.
box,
Yeah, that's
cover.
supposed to be the J200 that
Yeah.
he
So
used most of the
I
time.
loved it. It was the only one they had in stock, and I bought it right there on the spot he brought it out. And it's a great acoustic electric guitar. I've talked to the
Oh
guitar
yeah,
player himself, who's a
I would
friend of mine,
imagine.
so many times about. He was so stoked that I bought one, and it's something that never really took off. And I mean, he was
Mhm.
fortunate to have had it, and I was like, man, you made such a great affordable guitar. I can't tell you how many times
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
own studio clients have shelved their guitar they brought in and use this to track their parts when I had my studio. So let me
Oh
go
man, yeah,
hang this back up, and then we'll get into a segue. You playing some songs of
yeah.
yours?
I got you, man. Let me
Yeah.
just plug this baby in real quick.
We can't hype you up as an Elvis cosplayer
Yep, and tribute
playing
artist,
Elvis
right?
music without getting a little taste.
Oh yeah, definitely. Might also have to adjust my camera a bit, but
So,
here,
what
let's
song would you like to perform for
hang
us?
on. That's a good question, but can you hear it?
Yeah.
I was thinking something, a couple of classics from the '68 comeback special. Maybe a cover two of Joe's Place by Joe Nichols, one of my growing favorite country artists, or somebody else. Let's see. Oh, hey, Scotty, are we on TV? Oh, wait. I think we're supposed to be on a train headed for Thompson.
We're on this thing called Zoom. Yeah, that sounds good. Now we're cooking.
We're going up, we're going down, we're going up, down, up, any way you wanna let it roll. Yeah. You got me doing what you want me. Well, baby, what do you want me to do? You got me peeping, you got me hiding, you got me hiding, peeping the way you wanna let it roll. Yeah. You got me doing what you want me. Well, baby, what do you want me to do? So there's baby
Yeah.
what to do. How do you like it so far?
I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you.
It's a little choppy through the computer, but
Yeah.
it's you
Mm-hmm.
get it regardless.
Oh,
So
definitely. Well, what I've really loved about that song is that it's it's the very first that Elvis plays, but in both stand up or not stand ups, but the sit down sessions when he swaps guitars with Scotty Moore, and he's basically just telling himself like this guitar isn't loud enough with regard to his acoustic, and then he picks up the semi acoustic electric from Scotty, and then he just suddenly takes the lead. He's, playing all those riffs and playing all those licks, and then he's rocking his head back and forth, getting his hair messed up a bit in the process. So yeah.
is
So
your
let's see.
favorite era of Elvis Presley? Like
Oh yeah,
used to
'68
be?
comeback special,
Yep,
hands
yeah.
down.
That's cool. Everyone's got their favorite Elvis era. Me,
Oh definitely.
it's the Sun era, early
Yeah.
Elvis.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, somebody always loved leather jackets. I mean, that was just kind of a must for me when he puts on that whole greaser outfit and he's exuding all that, energy, all that swagger when he walks onto the stage.
Right? Yeah. So let's
But
get a little bit of that. Let's summon some
uh,
68 comeback special.
yeah. Well, wait, let's do a little reenactment. So anyway, uh,
Take it.
yeah, well, thank you very much. I mean, I like a lot of the new groups out there, all the Beatles and the Beards and whoever, but a lot of it is basically, or music is basically, rock and roll music is basically gospel and rhythm and blues. It sprang out from that, and it's blossomed into what it is ever since. And there's one thing about Sulo King's show that I'm really happy about. He's letting me do the music that I want to do, singing the music that I want, music that I love, music that makes me happy. One high with you is what I'm now praying for. The things that we two have planned would make my dreams come true. Just call my name, and I'll be right by your side. I need your sweet helping hand. My love is too strong to hide. Only live a very quiet life. I never did no wrong. Now I know my very quiet life. It's been too lonely, too long. One night with you. Here's what I'm now praying for. The things that we two have planned would make my dreams come true.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me know when you get sick of hearing that, as I always keep telling my fans.
I can never get sick of hearing Elvis Presley.
Oh, likewise.
Yeah, one of the greatest artists of all time.
Oh, absolutely. And what I love about him too is not only his value as a musical artist, but also a lot of the lessons that I guess I kind of learned because when I first wanted to become a singer-songwriter, I guess I wasn't really that aware of how cutthroat the competition was, and on top of the competition, you know, just how shrewd and how manipulative like people in management could be. And so I felt that was something that the movie really opened my eyes to in terms of just like his abuses by the colonel, wanting to do more, wanting to exercise a bit more creative freedom, but never really being given the chance to do so. And so I felt that the movie, on top of just showing me how great Elvis was as an artist, also provided some, valuable lessons in terms of what to look out for, say, if you get a manager, or in terms of like, in terms of the creative process, things to, keep an eye out for.
Right? Yeah. Good insights.
Yeah.
So, any conventions you're gonna hit coming up, like
Oh yeah,
Comic
sure.
Con or anything like that?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, but for now, I mean, WonderCon was a lot of fun, but obviously I'm now taking, I'm taking a break from a couple of cons. I mean, still going to be attending some events in my area here and there, but what I really want to do this year is, on top of like looking for a regular job just in case, music doesn't pan out, I really want to dedicate my time to events that are going to help me grow my brand out. So I mean, the only two major cons that I have planned for this year are Dragon Con Atlanta, and if I can get tickets, New York Comic Con. But I'm thinking maybe this year could also be if I have enough money, and perhaps if I have maybe another job. You know, I'd like to see if maybe I can go to Graceland as well, just to be able to not only step into the King of Rock's iconic home, but also to walk around, I guess, reflect, especially as somebody who's just kind of been struggling as a young adult on the spectrum, kind of have an opportunity to kind of take a step back and also just get more in touch with my love for Elvis Presley and the things that he stood for.
You gotta do Graceland. That's
Yep.
standard. I highly recommend that. And if you do go out there and book a tour, there's a couple
Mhm.
places I recommend you go see. The old
Yep.
Stax Records site,
All
and
right.
then Beale Street. Jerry
Mm-hmm.
Lewis has a club out there. I recommend checking
Yep.
out. Um,
Gotcha.
just walking up and down Beale Street and just kind of
Mm-hmm. Okay.
checking it out. Definitely
Yep.
got to do Sun Studios. I mean,
Definitely. And if
that's
I
a
may ask too, so as a as a young and rising Elvis tribute artist, I mean, as much as I've been putting myself out in Comic Cons and people have been saying, yes, I do have the talent, I guess something that I've been looking for is a venue where I'd be able to put myself out and, kind of maybe perform a song or two and get people who would actually be in the industry other than yourself to see. Whether it be anywhere in Beale Street if I were to go to Graceland, that, whether it be anywhere in that area in terms of venues that I'd be able to, maybe sign up for a gig, a quick gig or something.
probably, yeah, 100%. I mean, the music scene out there versus like out here on the
Hmm.
West Coast, completely different. People play for
Yeah.
tips more than anything out there, and they got a lot of open jams. And
Yeah.
I mean, you just gotta kind of look at where they have live music, which is almost pretty much everywhere out there in the bars, and just
100%.
kind of start contacting the venues
Hmm.
personally. I think
Yeah,
that would
you,
be a great idea. A lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
do
Hmm.
Elvis tribute bands.
Hmm.
If you want to just do something kind of more of a solo aspect, like the '68 comeback special,
Yeah. Well,
that might
actually,
be
now that we're
a
talking
whole
about it,
avenue for you.
yeah, oh,
My
definitely.
question to you is
Yes, of course.
what, how do you want to present this tribute? Like, what exactly do you want to do?
Well, perfect you asked me at this moment because I was actually about to segue into this next portion. So, I mean, the 68 comeback being my favorite era, my favorite period of Elvis's career, and wanting to kind of merge my love for anime, comic books, and the like. A couple of ideas that I had were actually created for Comic Cons, but I always wanted to do a semi recreation or sit down of the 68 comeback here shown in the movie with Austin Butler, Xavier Samuel, and who is it? David Gannon as Elvis, Scotty Moore, and Charlie Hodge. I wanted to do a recreation of this, but with either maybe an Attack and Titan twist, or with my Morph Elvis crossover from last Saturday, maybe an X-Men twist with costume cosplayers as the audience, a bunch of anime or comic themed Elvis songs being sung at them, joking around the audience. That's what I had in mind, maybe for a con like Dragon Con or perhaps New York Comic Con. But at this point, what I'm looking at doing is just, as I mentioned, I keep saying this, but growing my brand out and passing the idea along because there are definitely a lot of people who are interested in it. But as somebody who's only performed at maybe like who's spoken on a disabilities and cosplay panel and sung at an open mic panel at Hallmat last year, I don't have a lot of experience to go on, but at the same time, a really ambitious idea. So now it's just a matter of getting the people together and also finding the right venues to showcase that yes, I can do this.
Great idea.
Thank you.
My best advice is to try to find local musicians in your area.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in the digital age. You can always even rehearse with people via Zoom. I've seen that happen before
Yeah.
too. You know,
Oh yeah.
uh, or you can, hire musicians, which can get a little more costly.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you
Yeah.
also have
I
to
mean,
consider
I'm
the
doing that for
visual.
the Elvis cover. I'm recording at Sun at the end of this month
Mhm.
because my
Yeah.
bandmates, when it came time to start working on the cover of Good Rockin' Tonight, they're like, well, it might make more sense just to hire a professional stand-up because I have to hire a stand-up bass player
Mhm.
regardless because I'm going to pay
Yeah.
proper tribute to it. And there's no real percussion on the actual track. It's just stand-up bass,
Mhm.
acoustic
Yeah.
guitar, and I think electric guitar player on it.
Ah, got you.
So after looking at the personnel list, listening to the track over and over again, just kind of, dissecting it. So I've only seen a few Elvis tributes out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're more frequent, in other areas of the country. They
Yeah.
have Elvis Week, for all the tribute artists and fans and whatnot. Um,
Mhm. Right.
or even people just like to cover Elvis. I think it's an interesting concept. People don't really focus on the '68 comeback special. The
Oh yeah.
tributes will go through the different, eras of Elvis, from
Mhm.
young Elvis to that to, Vegas, Viva Las Vegas Elvis.
Yeah. What I
Um,
like about the '68 comeback too is not only how powerful he looked, but we actually get to see Elvis with a guitar, a handful of guitars actually. I mean, in the sit downs, he starts off with that J200, and then he
but
swaps for that Super 400, and just really showcases how much of a musician that he really is. And then when we go to the Guitar Man intro, and then the stand-ups, he's using that cherry red Hagstrom Viking, and just like showcasing his showmanship and also just his ability to excite an audience. And this is
right.
like for the first time in 7 to 8 years after he's been making all these movies. So whenever I do, whenever I walk around a con, that's the kind of energy that I like to bring to other people.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the '68 comeback special, in my
Yeah.
perspective, is it showed how much he missed playing music. It showed, a
Mhm.
very personable side we didn't really get to see a whole lot of,
Mhm.
and I like how he's talking about how music has
Mhm.
drastically changed and, his whole,
Yeah.
you know, outlook on the future of music and, what artists were popular bands and the British invasion, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And just,
Definitely.
it was something very unique, and you don't see artists really doing. I thought in the
Mhm.
90s, MTV Unplugged was like the
Yeah,
closest thing we really came to anything like that. And even since
absolutely.
then, we haven't really seen anything like that other than the
Oh
50th
yeah.
anniversary of
Yeah,
the
and that was
of that.
actually, I've only seen a handful of clips, but that was also a major inspiration in coming up with the vision for this '68 comeback reenactment. I mean, the original idea was it was actually an application for Hallmat to do like something similar to the stand-up. But then when I started to see more and more of the sit downs, I realized that would be a lot of fun too, because it's an opportunity to, sit down with fellow musicians and then jam. And also when you get to see when Elvis is jamming, you see him cracking, making wisecracks and being funny with the audience, like "Give me the piece of paper, man," or
Right,
"Elvis will now do a Christmas song," and he's making all these goofy faces, and the people are just can't get enough of it. Because
right,
as far as I'm aware, um, the sit downs weren't even supposed to happen. It was just an idea that Steve Bender got when he was walking around Burbank, and then he sees Elvis and Charlie Hodge playing guitar together after the more musical segments like the Guitar Man and the Gospel. That he tries to bring a camera in, but Colonel Parker's like, no, you can recreate that on the stage, but we don't have time for this crap or something like that. And so
yeah,
was around that time that he tried to get the colonel to give out tickets to other people, but instead he just dumped them in some sort of like parking lot booth. And so it was with the help of a local DJ in Bones Howe that they managed to get people from who were listeners of like a certain DJ in the area, as well as relatives of dancers and other choreographers in the more musical segments to actually get together and form an audience for Elvis when he did the sit down. So I thought it
right.
was really cool to see all the improv and just all the behind the scenes that I learned about in Steve Bender's book. That I realized that sure I got like a really ambitious idea and I don't really have much experience, but seeing that Comic Cons and pop culture are just something where everything comes together and everything's possible. Why not try to make that happen? And maybe that can be break into break into the music and maybe the acting industries as an up and coming artist.
Yeah, it's a different, concept. I've never seen anyone really do that before, and that's the beauty part about going to these different, conventions, and with cosplaying. In fact, I performed at a cosplay event called Wasteland Weekend, which is a Mad Max themed post-apocalyptic
Nice.
festival. You had to cosplay as a performing artist in order to get in, or they wouldn't let you come in. And
That's pretty cool.
it's like an immersive world.
Mhm.
It was so surreal and so cool, and I was very fortunate to have had an album coming out that was in production at the time, and we wrote a song that had a very post-apocalyptic feel called Radiate, and we filmed a music video out there.
Wow, that's
So
really cool.
I
So
can
if you don't
relate.
mind my
And
asking
what's that?
so if you don't mind my asking, for this Mad Max event, did it have to be a Mad Max cosplay specifically?
It didn't have to be Mad Max, no. I
Okay,
mean,
gotcha.
each film in the franchise was featured, and they had different
Okay,
tribes,
gotcha.
and they had, replica cars. They
Mhm,
had a Thunderdome. They had it was
mhm.
just more of a post-apocalyptic cosplay
Okay.
than anything. People could
You
walk
guys
around naked if they wanted to. I mean, it was like the most free
Yep.
thing I've ever seen. Of course, it's close to
Mm,
the Edwards Air Force Base, so they had a few MPs on site to make sure that no one
yeah.
was, going to
Yeah,
kill
like
each
getting drunk and
other.
getting
Because
crazy.
some of
Yeah.
these cosplaying weapons were pretty
Mhm.
deadly
Yep.
looking, to be honest with
Oh,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I thought,
And the outfit,
oh, sorry.
yeah. It's like it was such a surreal event. And I
Mhm. Yep.
fought tooth and nail, submitting my application every single year that ever since I got wind of it in Comic Con, which is in our backyard here in San Diego.
Yep.
And 2017, finally, we got on,
Mhm.
and I have the poster of it hanging up to my right.
Oh, definitely.
It was a very proud feeling, and I'm glad we got to capture that. And I don't
Yeah,
know
it
how
was as soon
different
as you mentioned
artists,
that,
and I've
sorry.
showed it to, the video, and they're like, wow, this is like cooler than, a lot of stuff I've done. And I'm like, well, you're a
Mhm.
famous artist, like you've done
As
all
soon
this
as you're,
elaborate stuff, but seeing how, like people, how much people love the whole Mad Max universe, you know what I
oh,
mean?
indeed. And I was thinking too that as soon as you mentioned it, it was just something that really interested me because I mean, part of the reason why I've, been doing Elvis is because it's been an opportunity for me to merge cosplay, something that makes me feel powerful
Right.
and helps me make friends with, music, which is just something where, like, for example, if I had just music, if I had emotions that were too strong and I couldn't, didn't just want to talk them out, I could always sing them out. So, yeah, as soon as you get onto Insta, I need more details on that because, hey, maybe next year or hell, maybe this year if I have the funds, have the time. It definitely sounds like something I'd love to do.
Wasteland Weekend is a pretty fun experience. It's a little grueling because it's in the middle of the desert, and
Yep.
it's a huge commitment because you gotta the travel out there. They give you longitude and latitude because there's no physical address.
Mhm.
It's
Yep.
considered California City. I've seen
Gotcha.
people, rent RVs to come out there. They've driven their replica vehicles out
Wow.
there. They live in tents. They live in these little villages and tribes that they're a part of that they've created. It's like
Oh my.
Burning Man, but less posh and pinky up. You know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Yep.
It's it's a trip, man. I highly recommend it. It's in September of every year. It's a
Oh,
4 day
nice.
festival.
Mhm.
They have live music, multiple stages, and yeah, it's if you want like a amazing experience, I recommend
Right.
that.
Mhm.
The Vampire Masquerade Ball that they do in LA is also really
Mhm.
cool. I think that's affiliated with Wasteland Weekend. They have like
Wow.
a newer one that's like a cyberpunk tech noir
Mhm.
thing. I can't remember the name of that newer festival. I'm not sure if took off or what, but I've known they've done like one or two of them. That's
Mhm.
like a newer thing that was like an offshoot of it. But I
Mhm.
love like all these interactive, conventions and festivals and
Oh, likewise.
cosplaying events. Like the whole cosplaying world
Mhm.
is
Yep.
for a while I felt like it was kind of bottoming out. Like it wasn't as relevant at Comic Con.
Yep.
I know they've been more controlled on, cosplaying with weapons because one guy came in there with an
Yep.
actual rifle
Oh,
with
yeah.
ammunition. I think it was at New York Comic Con or this was
Yeah.
years ago.
Damn.
I know there before COVID happened, there was a ton of
Mhm.
regulations that went into effect because of that.
Oh, I
And
can imagine.
I get a lot of the 411 because of,
Mhm.
my set of friends that are
Yep.
higher ups in Comic Con world,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Con. One of them's a VP, the other's assistant to him. So, they're
Mhm. Yep.
always updating me, especially if I read articles and, there's a lot of sometimes there's misinformation and rumors floating out there. So it's nice to get the 411 on what's really going on in that whole world. And then, the different actors that float around in those circuits.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh,
I
that
recommend
was part of
Comic
the
Con. Comic Con's always, the largest
Yep.
out there. So
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
tough one to get into. But if you are able to get tickets, I highly
Mhm.
recommend it. Some people just travel out here, even
Yep.
without tickets, just to be a part of the whole immersive experience because there's so
Oh, I
many
believe this.
outside events in downtown San Diego that
Mhm. Yep.
interactive experiences, parties,
Mhm.
exclusives, stuff like that that
Oh,
people are.
definitely. And while we're talking about cosplay, I actually thought I might ask you. I hope you wouldn't mind if I shared with all the listeners and all the viewers here how Survey Core Elvis, the cosplay that I'm kind of wearing right now, came to be.
I'm sorry, what was it? Survey what?
Survey Corps. So the Survey Corps are the main faction in Attack on Titan. They do like all the scouting. They take down the Titans themselves. They're basically the primary defense force in the
Okay.
military.
Sure, you could talk about that. No
Of
problem.
course. So yeah, changing the topic a bit. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
I'd use this opportunity to share how Survey Corps Elvis came to be. So let me bring up some pictures just to give you guys an idea. So yeah. So in Attack on Titan, this is what the Survey Corps on the right look like. This is the main character. I know it's kind of hard to
Okay.
tell the glare, but
A little bit of a
that's
glare, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
basically.
we can
Yeah.
see it well enough.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Aaron Yeager, the main character. So as you can see, they usually wear like this short jacket, which I'm wearing a replica of right now, the an undershirt, a leather skirt, and some equestrian boots. And here he is alongside Elvis during the '68 comeback special. And I was looking at the two pictures, and I mean, part of the inspiration was Agent Elvis, where he's doing some crazy things like he's taken down like drug dealers and
Oh, you're talking
Soviet
about the
prisoners.
cartoon, the animated
Yep,
series. Yeah.
yep. So yeah, that was one major inspiration. It's like wanting to bring Elvis to the anime verse. But I was looking at the jackets too, and I saw some, pretty crazy similarities. Like the collars look very much like what Elvis wore when he was in the sick when he was performing in the comeback special, and then later in Vegas. They
Uh,
got the jacket is cut very short to and yeah, and they've also got very similar side pockets, which, if you look next to Elvis, is pretty much what he wore during the comeback special. So
right.
I thought, why not merge that outfit with a guitar? Because that would look pretty badass together, right?
There you go. Yeah, do your thing,
Yeah.
man.
Well,
I
thank you.
think it's very unique and cool, and I love how passionate you are about it.
Thank you.
And it's all about creating your own niche, and finding your originality is the hardest thing to do as an artist.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
um, a lot of musicians I know, start going to what I call the retirement home for musicians. I mean,
Yeah.
they go to
Yeah.
the tribute city or cover band hell. And for me as an original
Yeah,
artist, that's just not something I'm ever really interested in doing.
definitely. Yeah, I
I
mean, I'm
love
still.
Elvis. I don't mind recording a cover, occasionally performing a cover. But I always want to put my twist on it and make it my own, which what you're
Same.
doing.
Yeah,
And that's why I think it's
absolutely.
such a cool concept,
Thank
because
you.
you're paying your due diligence and respect and
Mhm.
love for the artist that you grew up listening to,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
had this, huge impact on you in your life. And
Yeah.
especially, like you have mentioned a couple times, and
Hmm.
when I met you, that it helped you, with your autism. So let's talk
Absolutely.
a little bit about that.
Yeah,
So,
please. Mhm.
like that is something that I'm really intrigued and interested in hearing more about, of how Elvis
Mhm.
helped you, being autistic.
Yeah. Well, I like to think too that because I'm what well, I generally try to stay away from like level one, level two, level three in terms of say the severity of the autism, especially around like other autistic people out of respect. I'm what people would call level one autism, as in I grew up with normal speech and I grew up, like being able to communicate my needs, but at the same time too, because of the way that let me just light my camera a bit. Because of the way that I process information, I tend to sometimes do in a more literal sense than most. And so with that, and also just like also you know, coming from a Filipino family where mental health wasn't emphasized as much, especially as an adult, it's,
Right.
created a certain sense of loneliness and a lot of, just, pain. And so it's been through the music, through the expressions of Elvis Presley that I kind of, even though I've never necessarily failed to feel emotions, at the same time, it was kind of hard to, put them out in a way that was, I was able to relate with people. And ever since I was a kid, even before Elvis became a part of my life, I always loved to sing and, put my heart into a song that I could really feel. And so, with the case of Elvis Presley, found that in spades, especially having a deeper voice, having, the black hair, and, some people even telling me that, despite me being Asian, kind of, looking like him too, to some degree, with like the baby face and, the facial expressions, which I know isn't a bad thing at all. I mean,
Oh
do I look?
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and the Asian culture, Elvis is huge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And if and I also like to think too that while there are many people that would say that many of his tics, like him always being constantly in motion, not always being the best socially, having like a very small group of close friends, and also being very passionate in the way he spoke about like his music with his fans,
Right.
was something that might have been exacerbated by drug abuse. I've also been reading a lot of forums where they discuss the possibility that Elvis could have been. It's possible maybe Elvis could have had a form of autism too. What do you think, if you don't mind me asking?
I can see that. I mean, I think everybody has a little bit of an aspect to that, on the spectrum. There's nobody's perfect.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely.
I have ADHD. I got diagnosed when I was 23.
Mm,
Uh,
gotcha.
my mother sent me to a learning center. I was born 5 weeks premature.
Yeah,
So she's always been curious, because, growing up, I felt like a total loner myself, and I didn't have a necessarily rough childhood, but
yeah,
uh, it was a little detrimental, father was an alcoholic and
Yeah,
parents were constantly fighting, and I was that stereotypical kid up late at night listening to them fight, stuff you see in movies.
in
You
my
know,
case, it was a bit
and
different.
that's all real, and it happens,
Yeah,
it's just not everyone likes to talk about it. I'm pretty
indeed.
open about it, never judged my father. He didn't,
Mhm.
turn his back on the family, he found sobriety, and still to this day, I've never judged him for that, and
Yeah.
I don't judge others for their misfortunes or their addictions. There's certain people I've had to walk away from completely because they just can't get a grip on it and
Mhm.
don't have the proper support system in their lives and
Yeah,
just don't want to change. Only you can change yourself.
indeed.
Working as a health and wellness coach now and a
Mhm.
neurotherapist,
Well, I
dealt
could
with a lot
imagine.
of people high on the spectrum. One of my current patients is 72 years old, very high on the spectrum, and all he's wanted in his life is just someone to listen to, someone to
Mhm.
accept him,
And that's
and
something that I feel
be
that,
deemed crazy or weird because he's very eccentric, he's very intelligent,
yeah,
and I love that about people, and I, have battled my own issues growing up, trying to understand, how to better myself and take better care of my mental health and battle depression and battle, all these different emotions because life isn't easy. It
mhm,
wasn't designed to be. And I always tell people, I was like, music is a very powerful, energetic tool.
oh,
And
indeed.
even do a treatment
Can change a
where
lifetime real quick.
incorporating
Go ahead.
sound therapy,
Mhm. Absolutely. And I
yeah.
feel that that's something too that Elvis touched on really powerfully in his JC's award speech. I remember him closing that, and then Boz Lerman yeah, would later use that as well. He said, "Without a song, the day would never end. Without a song, a man ain't got a friend. And without a song, the road would never bend. Without a song, so I'll keep singing a song." And so that's just kind of been something that has really propelled me as both an Elvis tribute artist and a singer because I mean last summer, or last year, I resigned from teaching high school full time because it was a long commute and it was a very violent group of kids who were just, we were just making it a really hostile work environment. But I mean, I was
Right.
fortunate enough that I had,
What grade were you
admin.
teaching?
Oh, high school, mostly freshmen though,
Oh,
and
there you
in
go.
a couple of
Yeah.
my classes too. Yeah, there were kids who were throwing things at me when I turned my back to write on the board, and yeah, and I was fortunate though that even though I had to leave that environment, my admin and department chair were some of the most supportive people in the world, and I
Right.
still have them to this day as friends. And it was with my principal that I shared like my first performances of like Blue Suede Shoes and If I Can Dream from
Right.
last year MegaCon, and right around the time too, that later that summer, my mom was getting kind of mad at me because like you went to college and you just want to become an Elvis impersonator, and that kind of hurt my heart. But it also made me realize too that it was through Elvis that I found another voice of my own. And then just a couple of weeks ago, when we were, having dinner together, I got to talk to her, and she was more receptive about it now that when I got to tell her like why I'm so passionate about Elvis, and it was also around that summer too that I got this
Oh,
tribute
nice.
tattoo. Thank you.
Without a
Yeah.
song, the day would never end. I
Yep,
love it.
and it's got a replica of his Gibson J200 with the
Right.
TCB logo, his signature.
That's great. I love it.
So yeah,
Now, so your former career was
yep,
teaching.
yes, and
What
I'm
are you doing
currently a
now?
daily substitute teacher.
So, besides pursuing
Yeah.
cosplaying Elvis tribute artist, what are you currently doing?
Well, I'm currently a daily substitute teacher, and I work with elementary schoolers now in a better district. So,
Have you ever thought of,
mhm,
because I have some artist friends that have gone back to school later in their lives
mhm, yeah.
and got into music education,
Hmm.
you
I
know?
mean, I've thought
Maybe
about
be
it,
a
but
music teacher eventually, like whether it's for special ed or, younger first grade,
well,
second
honestly,
grade, third
yeah.
grade, just working with children maybe,
Well, honestly,
emphasizing
I've
music
actually been,
programs in
yeah,
public school systems, stuff
yeah.
like that.
Well, actually, I've been at a point too where I've been at a point where while I don't necessarily hate the job, it is becoming very unfulfilling because as an autistic, kids can eventually be a bit too much when you're trying to handle their needs all at once, or if you have an uncooperative class. So I'm at a stage where I'm transitioning out, looking for maybe some quieter, less hectic jobs that fit with my Bachelor of Arts in Spanish. And I'm
Uh,
also, but on the side too, that's why I've also been investing a lot of time in being Elvis in the hopes that maybe sometime this year or maybe next, hopefully, that something might something might pick up for me professionally and I get to actually start, building a career and doing something that I love as a long-term job and, ultimately a passion.
right? Have you performed live, done any performances in Virginia or anywhere?
I used to do like talent shows when I was in high school and a couple in college, and then I've also done like a lot of karaoke, both at cons and but mainly in like Florida. So that's kind of the extent of where I've been, doing
Okay.
things like mainly at cons.
Yeah.
But you
Do you have acoustic guitar?
yep, I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Is it a acoustic electric?
It's just a regular acoustic. It
Okay.
was
Yeah.
yeah, I bought it
Right.
like maybe
I mean,
10
you
years.
could do solo gigs, as and start pitching yourself that way.
Mhm.
I like the whole concept of recreating the 68 comeback special. I think
Yeah,
that's a great concept right there that you should start working on formulating with other musicians
oh
and this
definitely.
really, fleshing that out. How long was the special? I can't remember off the top of my head.
So they
How many
actually filmed
how many
in
songs
terms
did
of
he perform through it?
I'm trying to remember. So the overall special for like the final product was about like an hour, but then I think they released like the hour 30 minutes cut or longer soon after Elvis died.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but for the actual 68 comeback sit downs, aka my favorite part, he filmed two single hour sessions with two different audiences.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could do something like that. You can keep it an hour to start with,
Okay.
so it's not too overwhelming, and
Oh, for
then
sure.
maybe start growing it over time. I mean,
Yeah,
you
that's the
really
plan
gotta,
too.
yeah, you really gotta. My best advice is to start linking up with some other musicians that
Mhm.
share a love for Elvis, or
Oh,
you might
indeed.
have to go the hired gun route. I mean, you gotta, spend money to make money, as they say,
Yeah.
sometimes, but especially when it comes to any kind of tribute concept.
hmm
Uh,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I'm
I don't
looking
know
at
what
doing that
the
now,
what
go ahead.
what city are you in Virginia again? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm in Alexandria, but at this
I
point,
don't know anything about the scene in Alexandria
yeah.
whatsoever, so I can't help you
I
out
mean, as much
there.
as there are like a couple, open mic gigs, I'm also at a point too where I'm thinking that I'm also beginning to think that it might be time if I really want to pursue this gig. I mean, of
Uh,
course, I'm gonna have to think practically in terms of finding like, something, an actual job to help me, continue to pay the bills. But I'm also at a point right now where I'm just thinking it may be time to relocate. And one of my other prospective options has actually been my old college town, Charlottesville, because it's closer to the south, and there's, like, a lot of
right,
country scenes there. I'm also next to my alma mater, UVA, so I'd be able to, get some resources for, like, a typical day job, and
right.
at the same time too, it's a quieter environment, so it'd be a bit easier for me as a person, and I could also possibly grow my brand there as well. Since
Right.
Elvis was very much, as much as Elvis is considered like a bridge between country, rock and roll, gospel, and rhythm and blues, he's still very much tapped into his country roots, and that's
Right.
something that I always enjoy doing myself as an Elvis tribute artist and just overall as a singer.
I love it. I love it. And
Thank you.
that's the dedication. I've seen a lot of artists, come through San Diego and tell me stories of, different cities they lived in. I've had plenty of acquaintances, friends move out of San Diego. In fact, the guitar player in my solo project who's flying out to Memphis with me to
Oh,
do
nice.
this project, he lived in Nashville and was in a songwriting guild out there. That's something that you might
Oh,
want to consider too, is joining.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
songwriting
thought
guild
about, maybe.
are and workshops are really helpful. Songwriting is a very hard craft. I'm
Oh,
the
yeah.
type of songwriter that can come up with great concepts and ideas and basic, song structures. But I need other brains, other people to help flesh out that product
Oh,
and turn
indeed.
my,
Yeah.
ideas
Indeed.
into a completed product.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, back when I was in college, actually, even though I haven't really posted anywhere, I
mm,
recorded my very first song and kind of inspired by have you ever heard of the TV series 90210?
Of course.
Yep. So I wrote a song inspired by character Naomi Clark and actually named it Naomi. It's basically about a guy meeting a girl in a Halloween party in costume. So you know, I mean, the people that I turned it to like friends and family, they said it was nice, but it never really took beyond just like that, you know, that small audience, and especially because that was around the year that the pandemic hit, and my friends and I were we created a music video, but then we all got separated because of COVID.
Right.
But yeah, it was basically based on this character over here. And I just,
Uh, it's hard to kind of see with the glare.
I know, sorry about that.
That's okay.
But yeah,
It's still
but yeah,
kind of
that's
hard to see,
she
but
was wearing a pirate costume, although I changed it in the song to her wearing a cheer costume because I thought it was kind of cute. Also referenced like Riverdale, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
that's cool. Well,
So,
I recommend still doing, the convention
yep.
circuit. That's a great networking
Oh yeah,
way, happy to guide you with whatever advice I can give you as far as formulating this product out. It's
yeah, thank you.
maybe even relocating if that's something that you really want to do. That's a huge
Oh yeah,
commitment. I mean,
definitely.
this
And I'm
is your
trying
life's
to,
passion and you want to do it as an artist. I'm always going to be supportive of that fact.
yeah,
And that's
thank you,
what I
brother.
love about this show and having different creatives and
Mhm.
people, telling their story, whether
Absolutely.
it's, surviving an illness or whether it's
Yep.
always, continually pursuing their dreams and turning those dreams into realities. You know, that's the beauty part about being on the king's couch. I
Oh
like
yeah.
hearing their early inspirations. Some people like myself, had their parents as integral parts to their story.
Mhm.
For you, it's more about self-discovery, and I love that aspect.
Self-discovery and making a family through people like yourself and people at these cons because as I mentioned before, I mean, when I first started getting into Elvis tribute stuff, especially after I resigned from my job, my parents were all kind of all over me, and they were like, they thought I was just wasting my life just trying to
Right?
become an Elvis impersonator. But then when I
I've heard that.
started to when got to present in that disabilities and cosplay panel, got to play at an open mic panel at the same con on another day, and then just started to then continued to upgrade my instruments and improve my singing and my guitar playing. Then they began to see that, okay, this is something that, while we do want you to have some actual work, this is something too that if, you're passionate about, then, keep getting better at it.
Right. And you know what? That's a good outlook and mindset to keep with you always. Music is healing, music is driving, music is always going to be there for you.
Mm.
So from one Elvis fan to another, uh,
Yep.
you have my blessing and whatever I can do to help support that, just let me know.
Awesome. Yep. We'll do that.
So it brings us almost to the end of this interview. Before we
Yep.
do wrap this up, is there anything else you want to share with others out there
Well, absolutely. I mean, this
about
is really more
yourself? Anything?
improvised. Yeah. Well, this is more improvised, but I actually want to share a heartfelt message from myself to other cosplayers and especially other cosplayers and artists with autism. I want you guys to know that as much as I've been struggling myself in these last couple of years, you're not alone. I want to let you guys know that with the right support, like from my boy Sulo over here and from other, friends and family, that you guys can continue to go on to your journeys. And I want to encourage you guys to, turn your passions into something that other people are going to enjoy. Hopefully, to turn it into something that's going to become a source of income for you. But ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is autism. One of the biggest challenges of autism is because of the way that we process information or have social interactions. It gets very lonely and depressing for us. And have there been times that I've wanted to give up? Oh, absolutely. There are many times when I just want to, sit down and break down and cry. And if you want to do that for a while, that's okay. But something that I was told by my former principal, now a friend of mine, she told me it's okay to cry, but always pick yourself back up. And the way that I've done that is through continuing to lean into music in a similar sense to how Elvis was inspired by the superheroes of his day, like Captain Marvel Jr., how he always saw himself as the hero in the comic books and the movies, it's similar how I see myself as similar to Elvis, paying tribute to his image, paying tribute to his legacy, and leaning into that music because it's always just that anticipation of being able to share it with other people that keeps me going and just reminds me that I do have a place in the world. So I want to let you guys know once again that you're not alone. And as much as you can, always continue to lean into your passions no matter what others may say. And just remember that, you know, something that I learned from the movie. For those of you who sing as well, if there is something that's just too powerful to say, sing.
That was well said, my friend.
And thank you.
That kind of took my next part away, which I was getting to is
Yeah.
having the guest, encourage others out there, to pursue their dreams. If you have any kind of motto or message, so you pretty much said it right there.
Thank you.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I love it.
Thank you,
Uh,
brother.
you know, Nicholas, Jack, whatever you want to be called.
Both the time.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And, it was such an amazing occurrence of how we met. And I thought a lot about that, leading up to
Oh,
this
yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
Right place, right time. And it was just kind of like, I remember my ears perked up like a dog, and the food cart or food truck was trying to get a hold of me. And I was like, hold on one second. Someone's playing some Elvis. You don't hear this every day. Around.
Yeah.
And there you are. And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
just, what is
And I won't
happening
lie,
right
man.
now?
Before I got to that con, I was watching the '68 comeback special, listening to, the renditions to really get into character because especially when Elvis sings and trying to get to you, when I read your loving letter and he begins to really shred on it, he closes his eyes and basically just belts it out. That was what I was trying to recreate both as a cosplayer and as a musician.
Well, you know what? You're
Yeah.
doing it, and you caught my attention, and I'm glad you did. And thank you for making the time to come out to the King's Couch podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you as a guest, sharing your story. And, you're the first guest I've had on here that's a hardcore Elvis fan like myself. And
Thank you very much.
I I never thought in a million years that I'd dedicate a whole episode to entirely talking primarily just about Elvis Presley. So it's been a real treat for me as well. And
Been
like I
great
said,
having
if you
you.
need any help or assistance, don't be a stranger. Feel free to ask me. And touching on what you said, I always kind of put that positive message out there. I'm always here if you need someone to talk to, if you need any kind of help. Re- doesn't matter like what situation you're in, what you're going on, or what's going on in your life.
Mhm,
It always helps to have, someone to vent to talk to. And I
mhm.
always, lend my open ear to others.
Oh, definitely.
That's all we really can do is try to, have some compassion for others or around
Definitely.
ourselves.
And I feel too that
Um,
that's, one of the biggest aspects of mental health too that just makes it so, makes it so vital. It's like having people around you that will be honest, but at the same time, they won't tear you down.
exactly. It's just like I look at it like this: you can empower others, not just yourself.
Yep.
Someone tried to correct me one time, a younger, someone around your age, and I looked at him. I was like, you know what? You just wrote a book about spirituality that I
Yep.
donated to, on top of things, which I never received my digital copy of to this day. Now that I'm thinking about that, but
Okay.
he's all, how can you empower others? So I was like, do you even know what the definition of empowerment means? It's
Oh
not
yeah.
just about, yeah, I get that the concept that only you can change yourself, but
Mm.
sometimes it's another entity's influence that'll help you wake up to reality, to make that conscious decision that, hey, I need to make this positive change in my life.
Oh yeah.
That's
One
where
hundred percent.
motivation and inspiration, where it comes from, and music is a huge aspect of doing that. So
Mhm.
keep doing what you're doing. I
Oh,
love
you
it,
got
and I'm here to support you any can, or in any way, shape, or form that I can. And keep spreading
it.
that Elvis Presley legacy out there. I love it.
You got it. Thanks
Yeah,
again for having me in the show,
yeah,
man. And
my
hope you wouldn't
pleasure.
mind having me for a future episode either.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll have to talk about that.
Oh,
Uh,
bet.
and on that note, that wraps up another episode of the King's Couch. I'm your
Yep.
host with the most, Sulo King.
Yep.
And we got to talk nothing more about, or sorry, we got to talk all about the king of rock and
Oh
roll
yeah,
himself, Elvis Presley.
my
And
boy, my
it's great
boy.
to see someone putting that into a cosplay aspect. We'll see you guys next time. Until then, long live the king.
And Elvis has left the building.
That's right.
The King of Kings. There is only one.